Today we're going to talk about the TI-84 Plus. I'm looking right now at the color edition. The first thing you're going to want to do is turn your calculator on, and that's that bottom left button. Once your calculator is on, what we're going to do is take a look at these different buttons here. You'll notice that some of these buttons have writing on them, and then there's also writing above each of the buttons. In order to get that writing above, we're going to have to hit a special key, but we'll do more about that in just a minute. Let's take a look at the buttons themselves and what they say on it. So you'll notice we have some buttons here that have just numbers in white, and we have some basic arithmetic operations like division, multiplication, subtraction, and addition in the light gray. These are the ones you would find on any typical calculator, a scientific calculator, even a four-function calculator like the one on your cell phone. So if you wanted to do some basic arithmetic, maybe I just want to add or multiply some numbers together, I could do 2 plus 3, and my equals sign is really the enter key. And I can see everything I wrote up on my screen and my answers over on the right. If I wanted to do, say, 2 plus 3, and oops, I changed my mind, I want to just get rid of that. Instead of hitting enter, I could hit clear, and that would delete the entire line. Or what I could do is if I realize I made a mistake, I could navigate with these gray arrows at the top, and whatever I'm hovered over, I can hit the delete key and it'll make it disappear. The next thing that's kind of useful is to notice that when I'm working with positive and negative numbers, there is a difference between the subtraction key and the negative symbol. If I were to try to type -3 plus 1, whoops, you'll notice it says ANS, and that stands for answer. It's trying to pick up the answer from before. This will not work. So instead, I need to hit the negative key, which is down underneath the 3. -3 plus 1. Now you'll notice it's a little smaller than the regular subtraction sign, and it's going to use that as a negative sign instead of a minus. Decimals as well we have here. So if I wanted to add some decimals together, you do not need to have that 0 in front of it, though you certainly can, and it will not make any difference. So if you want to include the 0 before the decimal place, feel free. You'll get the same answer, but it's not necessary. The next thing I want to talk about are these parentheses. When we're doing our order of operations, if we're typing it in the calculator, it's very useful to make sure that we are including those parentheses. That way we have the correct order. The comma, we're not really going to use that often. That is meant for some of the higher level items that we'll see later on in the year that this calculator can do. What else is important if we're talking order of operations, though, is an exponent. So there's a couple of ways to get certain exponents. First of all, I might want to do something like 9 squared. Well, if I want to do 9 squared, the first thing I'll do is type in my base of 9. And in order to square it, I actually have two options. I can use this squared button over here on the left nearby the 7 and the comma, and that will automatically put an exponent of 2. Or what I could do instead is after I hit the base of 9, over on the right above the division key is a caret, and that will let me type a 2 in, or any number, as an exponent. So the 2 is just a shortcut over here on the left, but if you want any other exponent, you're going to have to use the caret key. The next set of buttons sit above the parentheses and the comma, and that's our sine, cosine, and tangent buttons. Our sine, cosine, and tangent you should be familiar with from geometry. If you want to find, say, the sine of a certain angle, you could click on it and then hit whatever it is you want to type in. But be careful, there's different modes. If you take a look at the very top, we see it says normal, float, auto, real, and the word radian. Radian is one of the measures we have for angles. Another measure is degrees. Right now, it's reading this as 90 radian. However, especially in geometry class, you haven't used radian yet. So what we're going to do is actually switch the mode. So we see we have a button here called mode, and we're going to click on that. We can see a few different things here. Math print or classic, we want math print. Normal, scientific, we're going to keep that as normal. If we want our numbers to float, meaning we're going to add in extra zeros up until a certain amount, we could do that, but it's really not necessary to put in any extra zeros, so float is just fine. But what we do want to do is switch from radian to degrees. So we're going to use these arrows to navigate. I'm going to move down. Now it's blinking over the word radian. And I'm going to move my arrow to the right. Now it's blinking on degrees. If I hit enter, it'll make that black rectangle go on the word degree instead of radian. Now I'm in degree mode. We can hit second and then the mode button again because it says quit above it. And in order to get any of the blue writing, I have to hit the blue button first. Now if I were to type sine 90, I'll get the answer I was expecting because if you notice, I'm now in degree mode. The next thing I want to talk about is how to get a square root symbol. So we saw the x squared before, but you'll notice there's a radical symbol just above that. Like we said, to hit any of the blue writing, we need to hit the blue button first. So I'll hit second and then the x squared button to draw the radical sign. Now I can take the square root of whatever number I would like. However, if I want to take the square root and then perform operations afterwards, you'll notice it's prompting me to hit the arrow. So if I hit the arrow to the right, now I can go outside of the square root to finish typing my expression. The next thing I want to talk about is the math button. We see that underneath the green key. There's a lot of really neat tricks in here. We'll explore these later this year, but the most important one is this word fraction. So let's switch real quick. We're going to hit second mode just to get out of here. And let's say I was doing some crazy division. Maybe I have 2 divided by 6, which we know is really 1/3. And we get this horrible decimal, but we want it back as just a simplified fraction. We can go to math, choose the first choice. I can either press the number 1 or I could hit enter. And then if I hit enter again, it's going to turn it back into a fraction. So math, enter, enter. It's one of the most useful little tricks we've got on this calculator. Next, we can graph, hence the term graphing calculator. In order to graph, we're going to hit the y equals button. In y equals, it allows us to type any equation in that's in the form y equals. For example, y equals mx plus b. So how do we get the x? Well, let's say we wanted to graph the equation y equals 2x plus 1. I would type in 2 to get x. That's this key over here next to the green key that says x, t, theta, and n. It's our variable key, but it's going to automatically type in x when I'm in this mode. 2x plus 1. Now, the next thing I want to press is the window. That's going to tell me how far to the left, the right, up, and down my graph is showing. So we see that the x minimum is -10. That means on the x-axis, there's tick marks all the way to -10. The x maximum is +10. That means on the right, the tick marks go all the way to +10. XSCL stands for the scale on the x-axis. That means the tick marks are counting by ones. And we see the same is true for the y's. From there, it really isn't important. It's all going to depend on really where your cursor was left last. The next thing I want to check is the zoom. Whether I'm zoomed in or zoomed out, it's hard to tell until we graph it. So what we can do to make our lives a little easier is choose the standard setting. So we're going to hit the 6 button, and that's always kind of our fix if things go crazy. Zoom 6. From there, we could hit graph if we hadn't seen our graph yet. So if from the y equals screen, if we know our window is good, we could just hit graph and we see we have our graph here. Now we see it crossing the y-axis, we see it in this positive angle, and we can check all sorts of different things about this. So what I could do next is hit the trace button. And what trace allows me to do is to run my cursor along this line and see the values. So when x equals 0, y equals 1. I can continue to press my right arrow to move along towards the right, towards the positive x's. So when x is 2.27, then y is 5.54, and so on. Or I can hit my left arrow and I can navigate the other direction. Now, this can be useful, except you'll notice I have a lot of really terrible decimals here, and maybe that's not what I'm looking for. So instead, I can use the calculate feature. So I can hit second, trace, and that'll choose calculate. Then it's just a matter of what I want to do. So if I want to know a specific value, I can choose that first choice. And if I want to know what happens, say when x equals 4, I can type it in and it'll tell me the matching value. Another thing I can do from calculate is to find the zeros or the x-intercepts. I can either navigate using the arrow or I could just press the 2 button. And if I want to find the zeros, I need to do a little bit of extra work. It's going to ask a few questions. So the first question is, what's the left bound? That means move to the left of the x-intercept. So I'm going to use my arrows. So now I am past that x-intercept and I'll hit enter to choose that spot. There's really not one correct answer here. You just want to make sure that you've moved far enough left that the calculator knows where you're past it. All right, we're going to move to the right of that x-intercept. So I'll keep going. X-intercept's probably there, so I'll keep going past it. Perfect. We'll hit enter. And then it asks us to guess. So we'll give the calculator a good idea of what we're looking for. Enter. And here we go. That the x-intercept happens when x is negative 0.5 and y is 0. There's some other features in there, but the next one I want to show you is the table. So if I hit second and then graph, we'll see we actually get an XY table, and this can be incredibly useful. Again, I can scroll up and down, and I can check those values. If I'm not happy with how my table is counting, I can go to table set. So second window will take me there. And then if I want to say start at -4, and maybe I want to count by twos, that's all I have to do here. I can go back second graph to get the table. And here I am starting where x is -4, and now it's counting by twos. The calculator can do a lot of other cool tricks too. For example, I can graph more than one thing at once. Maybe I want to graph this and x squared. So let's leave that there. It's in blue right now. If I hit x and then squared, now I see that I have another equation. When we go to hit graph, we're going to actually see both of them on there, and it'll graph it in order and by the color coding. Notice we had blue and red on our graph. We see blue and red. Another neat trick we can do is figure out where they intersect. So we could solve systems using our graphing calculator. So if we hit second, calculate, we can choose intersect as one of our choices. It's going to ask a few questions. First one is the first curve. So I am currently on the blue line. We see y1 equals 2x plus 1. Perfect. That's the correct curve. The next curve is the parabola, x squared. I'll hit enter again, and then it asks me to guess. So the problem here is that there's actually two correct answers. There's two different places that the parabola and line intersect. So I'm just going to navigate my arrow towards one of them and choose that. Now I see the intersection points. They don't cross nicely, but that's okay. I could round. I could do it again, second, trace, and choose intersect. And when I go to guess, I want to make sure I am guessing the other choice. So I'll move my arrow to the right, and this way my calculator knows which one to give me. There's a lot of other neat tricks that this calculator can do, and we'll explore those later this year. We can get into matrices. We can do something called logs or exponential functions. We can even run all sorts of crazy statistics from here. But for now, this is a great start. I hope you learned a lot today. Take care.